order for the county commission.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. John.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Mark.
Here.
Sean.
Here.
Troy's here. Okay. Any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I was wondering if we needed to talk about the audit. Did that all get squared away? Or
The audit,
With her older.
I think he's planning to come next week.
okay, then we don't need to talk about that.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Been moved by Dale to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second? Seconded by Sean. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Take a look at the minutes from the March 8th meeting. Didn't we talk about mail delivery on our old courthouse, new courthouse?
I think so. That last
Or was
meeting,
that
or,
agreement on?
or maybe it was 2 meetings ago. I know we have.
I mean, something needs to happen there, Samantha.
With what?
The mailboxes? Or?
I've been in contact with the post office and they're getting back to us. They have a meeting in the middle of April to talk about it.
What?
Yeah, that's what they told us, to see if it's their requirements or something, or if they can do that. So they're got a meeting and she's gonna get back to us in the middle of April.
Okay. So, was it on, did we talk about it last meeting or not? I didn't
think
see it
so,
in the
Yeah,
minutes.
that's at the end of the meeting, towards the end of the meeting.
Old courthouse, new courthouse.
I thought so. Or was it the meeting before? I can't remember.
I think we've been talking about it since last November.
Well, that's the
But
thing.
no, we made a specific.
You wouldn't
point
think
about
that
it.
would take that long to resolve such a simple thing.
How many boxes do we need? How many offices do we have? That will have to have their own, I should say.
How many boxes do you have at their post office?
Nine?
So there's 9 separate boxes at the
I
post
think
office
so.
for the courthouse?
Okay. So that's what we'd have to look at, replacing something like that.
And we've talked to the post office and they
You showed us some pictures of what we could get.
the social services did. Yep.
Oh,
And
I thought you had some.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary gave him to Sam.
Okay.
Yep. And so then I did ask them, could we do this? And they said, yep, that should be no big deal. You just pick out a box. And then all of a sudden we had a note in our mailbox saying that they need to go and make sure that the rules, since we're on one side of the
Yep.
street or something
Yeah.
about it, and where they'd have to be placed, and if they could be here, if we'd have to keep it. It's
And then I wonder if it hasn't something to do with how many people they're delivering to at one
Yeah.
time. Then with 9 boxes, I think we could have our own. If we put it in inside, they'd have to deliver there.
right.
But why do we have to have 9 boxes?
You wouldn't need
Why
9
can't we
boxes.
just have one big one in Griggs County?
Yeah, yeah.
I suppose it saves somebody sorting out who goes to which office. That's one of the
Well, you guys don't sort it when you pick it up, do you?
Because it's already pre-sorted. Then
What do we have 9 different containers, or you just dump it all in one?
9 trips.
9 people?
no, there's only one vehicle that goes
Right,
usually.
no, but
I go.
9 times.
don't,
Sometimes 9 boxes.
No. Everybody usually, like one person from each
Go to
office,
pick-
or we give somebody the key. Like if it's just me in the office, I'll give
Yeah.
Christy the key and she'll go and grab my mail for me, or that way.
right, but I mean, couldn't we have one communal box, a big one, and just dump it in there?
Or one box with compartments inside of it. You just open up the one and, I don't know. I don't know.
They're looking into it for us to get
There's
it
gotta
up
be a
here.
simple way to do it.
It's gotta be a simple way. We'd hope. Sometimes the simplest thing could be real complicated.
They shouldn't.
We're working on it.
Okay, sounds good.
Do you want me to go back on the recording and make sure, see which?
Well, I just went back and looked at the minutes from the meeting before, and there was nothing in there
Yeah.
either. So, I mean, I know we talked about it.
Yeah,
The last
I'm pretty sure it
month.
was at the last meeting, but I don't know if it was under the old courthouse, new courthouse, or the future business.
True enough.
Yeah, I don't know.
Would you like me to go back and then we can approve these minutes at the next meeting?
Sure.
Okay.
Any questions on the bills?
We have 3 that need to be added on if we could. There's a KLJ for $750. There's a Bin City Bulk for $544. And there's a Home Owned Service Center of $2,144.60.
What's that?
That's that repair shop in the old.
Oh,
Griggs.
okay, gotcha.
Who went there?
I did. Power steering hoses leaking, spark plugs were missing, oil. Axle seal was leaking, differential seal was leaking. And then all the upper control arm was through,
What was this on?
2007 Ford. 168,000.
That we drive and,
I drive.
is it parts vehicles? If all this stuff was missing off of it, or what's the deal?
Yeah. Good thing is, those spark plugs don't cost. They're only about $100 a hole. Go fix them. Ford's a better idea.
They're affiliated with Napa?
I think they are a dealer or something. But they don't have parts on hand like the Napa down Bingham's.
Any questions on the bills?
Make a motion to approve bills.
It's been moved by Mark to approve the bills as presented with the addition of the 3 that came in after the packet went out. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dale. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. John?
Aye.
Dale?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
John? Troy votes aye. Motion carried. Okay.
Is that agreement between the North Dakota DOT? Yeah,
On awarding the seal coat?
awarding the, yep. Awarding the project to our seal coat. Has to be signed. If that is, if you want to go ahead with the project.
We talked about that last meeting too. What was the
Yeah,
discussion?
we were wondering about the seal coat company. The one we had before was Aztec
Okay,
Asphalt Service.
so Morris has got this bid?
Morris
Yeah,
Seal Coat
Morris is
Company.
a little bit on this one.
Yes, they both, yeah.
They a Minnesota contractor too?
Yep. Most of them are, seems like.
You know, all three of the ones that normally get bids from, and we got bids from this project in Minnesota.
Yeah, we had more seal coat, had the 65, 445, asphalt specific technology, that's what we had before, it's 279, 65, and then the tubeless paving, $321,536.
So they're all right, we should, you think?
We've had them before, which we just had.
I move we sign the resolution then and have more steel quotes perform the job.
Been moved by Sean to approve the resolution awarding more seal coat seal, chip seal, and
Bob?
is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Dale, is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. John?
Aye.
Dale?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Troy votes aye.
Anyway, he said as soon as we get that signed, then we'll send it in, or send it on to the company, and then they'll sign the paper and send it back to us for signing contract.
Yep.
I sent in the request for proposal to perform construction engineering for that bituminous seal coat and fog seal. And it's on the North Dakota website right now. And then I put in there a date of April 12th at 1:15. All the bids or the proposals have to be to the auditor. And then after that, we'll have to have a committee go through the applicants, pick out the three, if there is 3 or 4, whatever, pick the top 3 out. And then we'll
Select
go
one of
over
them.
and decide.
Okay.
Right. I got an email from Brian Fuchs, North Dakota DOT, and he was talking about the possibility of flooding and damage to federal aid roads. Federal aid roads aren't covered under the regular FEMA disaster, so that's our federal aid FAS roads. And in order to do that, we have to have, like, we're in the Devil's Lake Basin, so there has to be like 700,000, in excess of $700,000 of damage in that area. And then we can tie into it if we have any damage.
That's that's what it'll take for the governor to declare disaster, you mean?
I think so, yep.
They
And then each
lowered-
site has to be $5,000.
I see.
God, for road repair, 700,000 isn't very much, is it?
Well, it used to be higher than that. They must have
I
lowered
don't
it.
remember what it was.
I thought it was $1 million or $1.5 million at one time.
I think maybe FEMA might be higher,
Okay.
I think. You know,
Or,
but they had specification or stipulations that it was pretty hard to get in there. You had to have water over the top of the road or something like that.
I see.
Or a culvert washout on County Road 2. In the Pickerel Creek.
We need to drive up there and make sure nobody plugged that one.
Maybe.
Put a Texas crossing.
Yep. Little rock.
Then, for sure everybody heard about Prairie Dog Bill is going through the legislature.
It's not gonna be funded for 2 years
2 years,
at least.
so I'm not gonna worry about it. But anyway, something to,
You'll be in session again before you think about
looks pretty good. Additional money.
So, but what I couldn't determine from that is when they're building up the reserve, are they still going to fund Is there still gonna be monies available to the counties in this 2-year period where they're building that fund up? Or are we gonna go without any money in this 2-year period?
We'll be going without any money other than federal aid, the federal aid that comes
Right.
from Washington.
Yeah.
Bismarck controls it until we see. But,
Yeah, so
we'd be
we're,
like we were before without it.
yeah, we're gonna be in the position we're in right now
Yeah.
for another,
Right. Don't forget
this year and 2 more years.
Yeah.
So there's there's gonna be $0 available
From
from
the-
Senate or House bill, previously Senate or House bill, now prairie dog.
Yeah.
Yep.
From what I can tell, this one's a lot less restrictive as far as what the money is really need for. You don't have to have, that doesn't have like as many criteria that you have to meet.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other than road projects.
Well, I got an email from somebody else, and they said, this is from LTAP, and they said you should just start thinking about projects that you're probably gonna do with that money in the future.
And that's kind of wishful thinking. So far, the legislature hasn't been able to predict 2 days ahead of time how they're gonna predict 3-4 years. There's so many things that can happen between now and then that they could decide they have to use that money for. Maybe they have to add on to the Teddy Roosevelt Museum or something.
Anyway, there's lots of legislators and people that are voted for it, supported it.
Yeah.
But it's that pail has to get full of money before it trickles over into our pail.
Yeah, but when their pails get full, they tip the other way usually.
Yeah.
Too many holes in the bottom of the pail. Well, I mean, what happens is it doesn't matter if they got a buffer. If you misestimate it, then the pail goes empty. You're in the same. It just delays the inevitable. If they can't forecast what the revenues are going to be, it doesn't matter how big a buffer you have there, because if they under forecast, they'll spend the buffer.
I don't know.
I mean, it in theory it should work out, but in theory it should work out the way we have it too. They're not getting another source of income.
Right.
It's the same source of income.
I had a question about the JD link. And I did print off a few things, but what you can do, it works best on a computer. I tried it on my phone, I downloaded the link, but it doesn't bring up all the apps or the places where you can go to get information. So if you go on your computer and you put in myjohndeere.com and hit on that, and then you'll go to the site and it'll ask for a username, which is Griggs County, all in lowercase, no space, it's GRIGGS and then your password will be capital D EERE 123. And you sign in, and it'll bring you to a page that has several different, I'll call them apps. But you click on the dashboard, that brings up a lot of this information. And then there's another one, can't remember exactly, it might be on one of those papers here. Click on that, you'll see our machines, click on the machines. You can track, it can show, you can go to on the right-hand side of the one page, there'll be layers, it'll say layers. Click on the layers and it'll bring up a drop-down box. And you can pick on a date, whatever dates you want to in the calendar for the last since we got it. And it'll track where the blade ripped. And if you zoom in close enough, you'll see if there was 3 passes or 2 or 1 if you just deadheaded to someplace else. In there it shows fuel utilization, how much you were idled, how much you ran under a light load, at medium, how much you had full throttle. Tells the hours, how many hours on the machine. I think they're all either over 500 hours or almost 500 hours. We've had some problems. On Jeff's machine, there's one sheet I handed, had a bunch of codes on there. That was top one, air, something, temperature, charge air. And what they found out was 2 wires had gotten rubbed together, and that's what made the go, which was a good thing. It really wasn't the turbocharger, it wasn't, something like that we were afraid of.
Turbochargers,
There was one day when, it's a serpentine belt, and there gets to be a lot of ice up in there, and it must have got a chunk of ice went through and it shredded the belt, and pieces were flying around. That could have been when it hooked on that wire, because it's up in that area. Jake's machine has got 5-wheel drive. They've been working on it 2 different times. The guy tech came up and worked for 3-4 hours the one time and a couple hours another day. Couldn't figure it out. So I believe on Monday they're gonna bring up a machine from Moorhead up here and take his back to Moorhead and try to figure it out. Plus we've had trucks in the ditch, we've had truck breakdown, we've got 2 fuel tanks that are leaking, hydraulic cylinders, hoses. And so we were fixing one hydraulic cylinder on one truck this morning. Had it in the vise, gave it a little air and it flew out. It kind of made a gash in Brian's hand because he was kind of holding the rod, and it flew over from here to Mark and hit Ken Sandvik in the side, and
Must have pretty good air pressure on it.
No kidding.
so we took him to the doctor and got checked out. And nothing broken, I guess, just bruised and sore.
I bet.
So it was busy after that storm was over. It was long days, and the stuff got so hard and so deep, it's just hard to get open. You had to spend a couple hours, Jake did, just to get through some over on the Washburn and around this line over there by Briss's.
That hard snow is hard on equipment also, you're hitting that hard and trying to knock a hole through it.
Yeah, and we had, the trucks banged.
That's why they were
until
going in the
got
ditch.
Yeah.
Then the townships didn't want trucks anymore because they had a hard time handling a lot of that snow, so
Sure.
they had to do it just to blades, and it took a little longer, but
Overall, you've been able to keep up with.
we kept up real good, as long as the snow was
Yeah.
down there, but when he got this last one, where it blew 50 miles an hour for a day and a half, night, and
It was really hard too, and it really
I
packed.
mean, when the state highway's plugged for 2 days,
Yeah, yeah.
What does Tom charge for those those big rotaries? Have you ever hired him?
I've never,
I knew they have a couple, 3 of them, but I never asked them what they charge.
I know they used it this year somewhere. I don't know if it was over in
I think they were over in Foster
Washington
County.
County. I think they used it last year, I think there too.
Does that go on a truck or on a?
It is a truck.
It's on a
Oh,
truck.
it is a truck.
The engine's in the back of the truck and the blower's in the front.
Yeah.
It's like a 600 horsepower blower.
Oh, really?
Don't all 4 wheels?
I think
Yeah, they're all-wheel drive
I
trucks.
think I saw that,
But they all steer too, I think.
Oh, I don't know. They
I've
grab.
seen it, yeah.
I think I saw that on Interstate.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, DOT's got one.
But could I talk to Wayne about this too, is, now isn't the time to buy one, of course, but, in some time, would we ever think we'd want one that would fit maybe on a payloader? That you could run with a payloader and, or we used it once and,
It's never gonna snow again.
let's hope.
I hope you're right. But we've used the tractor. We used the tractor a few times this year. In some
Yeah, maybe
areas,
that gets us
some
by.
places. Township line was blocked. We couldn't get there for a few days, so.
97, we did a lot of snow blowing on the road. Once you get that pile along the edge, you're in trouble.
Yep, the best is for you guys just to go on your computer and just can't hurt anything.
sure.
Nothing
Yep.
wrong.
But people have to realize too that you live in the country. That's kind of the way it is.
Well, I mean, you don't buy, no matter what business you're in, you don't buy equipment for the absolute peak, you buy it
That's
for
right.
the average. So there's gonna be times, I mean, just as you as a farmer,
Yep.
you don't have enough combines, so you can just work them 6 hours a day.
Yep.
You probably should have had more though last year.
Yeah, well,
And could have had more. And you know, then what people do, they hire custom
yeah, so, right,
to
so,
get the job done.
you know, there's always gonna be times, unless you're very over-equipped,
Yep.
and that's not efficient to be over-equipped. You have to equip both equipment and personnel for the average. And then you have to use, either takes more time or you hire additional labor in the peak situations.
Extraordinary situations.
Yeah.
And you gotta be flexible on how you run your manpower and that sort of thing, you know. But,
Anything else, Wayne?
Kind of done. I think Paul's got some, probably.
Yeah, I guess on that,
Can ask about that.
okay, on that chip seal, you know, we sent them that check to try and get that permit ahead of time. Well, they asked me if the county was the owner and the contractor, and apparently you have to say yes or they kick it back, so.
The Burlington Northern.
Yeah, the Burlington Northern, what is their, Jones Lane LaSalle Brokers, or insurance outfit, anyway, so they sent our check back, but now that we know the contractor, we have to send that back in. I'm just wondering if we would be able to reissue that check to keep that all moving.
You can't just send the same check in again?
They wrote void on there.
Oh.
If they wouldn't have done that, that's exactly what it would have done.
Why would you void somebody else's check? That's strange.
So that they know they've been through the process once, I suppose.
I suppose.
I'm gonna walk this to the end.
Well, you can, I mean, we don't have to reapprove that. We already approved it. Samantha can reissue the check.
Okay.
I would
I
think.
think there's actually a voided one.
Yep, okay, I just wanted to make sure that was, how that would work. Let's see, then the Hannaford Road, we got the plans done for that, and the SPs, I went through those again yesterday and fine tuned them. I guess we've been talking with, quite a few different people within our company and from outside and from the DOT, and they've got, you know, we use their special provision for having PI gravel, and we had talked originally when we kind of scoped the project about not doing that and just adjusting the gradation, but it sounds like the PI requirement is necessary for the base one to perform well, so we adjusted our SP to match that, so they will actually have some production testing that the contractor is responsible for, and then we'll do the same on our end. I think it'd be about 9 PI tests that the contractor has to do for this quantity, and then about 4 that we would have to do during production. And we set up like a tolerance between our tests and theirs, so that everybody's gonna be on the same page before it starts getting delivered to the road. Then we'll also test on the road to make sure that they're handling their stockpiles appropriately, because a lot of times what happens is that they'll put up their stockpiles, they'll have all these production tests, and then when they haul it out to the road, it doesn't meet the same specs because they're, you know, not blending it as they're loading it. It just gets segregated due to handling. So we'll test on the road also, and that's what we'll base the acceptance on. And then we'll also have a pay factor adjustment, that anything that's like, it gives them a good target to shoot for, that they'll actually have an incentive to give you a better material. And I guess that pay factor table is here, if you guys want to take a quick look at that. So if the range of 4 to 7, they'll actually get paid a little bit higher per unit price using this SP. Because that's really the sweet spot of where you want it, so it isn't greasy when it rains and it still sticks together well. So that, to get to incentivize a contractor to actually give you what you want, you pretty well have to make it, give them a monetary incentive and disincentive. So I think this will work well. But since that was different than what we talked about originally, I wanted to let you guys know before we advertise for bids on that. Anybody have any questions on that, or any concerns with us doing the PI tests? And I know you guys have been through that before. The contractor had some complaints about PI testing in general, but I think the industry is moving towards that, and it's becoming much more commonplace.
How often is every road tested?
No, it's, so during production, the contractor tests, every 3,000 tons as they're making it. Our check tests would be every 6,000 tons. The job is 25,000 tons, so there'd be, and we would probably lump that last bit in with the previous one, so, they'd run 9 tests, we'd run 4 during production, and then on the road, it's one physical property, so, no, it's every 3,000 tons on the road that we test again. So that'd be 8 tests. Or 8 lots, sorry, 3 tests each.
So where we had the problem before was on the very finest material on the PI test. And we decided we were really gonna ignore that. Because that was we couldn't achieve that.
Okay, and that's kind of the concern that we had with it too, is that the reason, looking at the test results and the way the road's performing out there in the Hannaford Road, and, looking at it, it seems pretty obvious that it was like 6% passing the 200, which is, they were getting deducts on it, the first 5 miles of it, and that's really where the problems are, that they didn't have enough fines at all, and then the fines they had probably didn't have enough binder. And this is just a good measurement of that.
No, I don't agree. We went through this, we went in length through this the last time, and the information we were given a big book out of South Dakota, and it was data arrived at from 1 mile of road testing. And there was no test. There was no test that you could actually say, was there enough fines of this material in or not in the material in order to cause these problems. So all we were doing was raising the cost because that material is not available in Griggs County.
Sometimes they have to import clay and mix it in with it, but that's basically how you get the PI. And we had a similar project up in Ward County 2 years ago, and that one, they actually got enough. They were on like the 13 to 15% passing the 200, and they had a PI requirement on it of like, I think it was 4 to 8 or 4 to 12, and that stuff actually got too sticky. I mean, there's a balance there. But they can make the material, and I think the contractors are getting better at it. It just takes some effort, and there's a lot of them weren't used to it, especially 4, 5, 6 years ago. But they're coming.
This was last year. Maybe I better state it another way. We went through this and we decided that we didn't want to have that 200 plasticity test in there.
I think they're encouraging it because it works better with the binder. For regular gravel, probably it isn't as critical because the cost is prohibitive, possibly.
Well, is the incentive enough to
What is the
cover the
increase?
cost
What is
of
the incentive
of
to produce it?
creating the
I guess
material? I
it
mean,
so it ranges from 0.8, a pay factor of 80% if they're down in the 2 to 3 range. If they're below 2, then it's basically non-plastic. So then it wouldn't stick together at all. That is a good measure of that.
Yeah, but
Whether it's a 4 or a 5, it's a little more subjective. But if it's between that 4 to 7, that is a pretty good window where they get paid extra to give you the better material.
One of our biggest things was there's so much inconsistency with the testing between.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's why
we didn't feel we should penalize the contractor when we couldn't get reliable results.
And I think having the in this, that's the way we wrote it, the way we did now, is that they're testing it as it's being produced too, and they're required to, and then we're testing every other test, basically, a split of theirs. So just to make sure that their tests are valid in comparison to ours, so they have to be within two on the PI requirement. Just to get that out of the way before you get to where you're paying for it on the road. So that, and then gets that fight out of the way during production, so their labs are testing the same as ours. And that way you get a lot better shot at good material.
I think that's why I asked the question that, you know, how often are you testing? If I get a bad load in there or a bad chunk, and like I said, in the township, I never get phone calls. But I sure got them when we put that snot on the road.
Right, and that's why we have it.
There is still, unless something's changed in the data that we were presented does not, it was a very controlled environment that this data was produced in 1 mile road in South Dakota.
Yeah.
So why in the world should we take that as gospel? And then start incorporating that into a county where we don't have that material anyway.
That's right.
Well, it's gonna make it impossible for contractors to even do it.
That's right.
Without a tremendous cost involved.
And again, the data is not proven. Again, 1 mile in South Dakota. That's what all this was based on, and all it's been pushed on.
Now, there's pits in Griggs County that have a lot of clay in them. And the complaint is that it packs so hard that it doesn't blade decently, and it'll take chunks as they go.
And this was just the very
Yeah.
finest. This was a 200
Yeah.
and below. It's a consistency of baby powder. There's still clay. There's still other measurements of clay in this stuff. This was a consistency of baby powder. And that was the only one that we didn't want to prior, that we didn't want to hold our contractors to. First of all, there's none in the county, and it was going to drive the cost way up. And secondly, there was no indication that there was any advantage to it.
But the biggest problem was Gilbertson's testing.
Didn't match the engineer.
They thought they were producing material that met the spec, and the lab that tested their tests or tested their work or whatever couldn't reproduce those results. So
Right.
so I think that's why he's talking about having them test the same tests to find out if everybody's using the same methodology.
Make sure they're calibrated to the same.
No, but the road test, the test on the road is going to be the deciding factor, correct?
Only if we say so. The
we didn't
problem
before.
is the problem with testing it on the road is if you're not careful how you collect those samples, you get garbage.
Right. So unless I'm missing something, we're going back to the same way that we already agreed we didn't want to go to, and it's trying to get pushed on us again, and we'll have the same problems again. Different engineer, same argument.
Okay, here, this team lab stuff, it has to have a certain type of gravel in order for that to work. If we're gonna put the money and expense in to see if it'll work, we've gotta have, that's why Paul tried to make it, he put the specs in that didn't have the fine PI in there.
Mm-hmm.
But the state didn't really think you should do that way.
Yeah, I guess Brian Fuchs at DOT, he runs or works with all the counties and in the state basically, and they've been the DOT actually put together their own gravel modified SP for graveling projects. I think they've been using it on their missile sites and stuff like that across the state, and they've had, it's getting a much better track record now than it was. The first few projects weren't written real well as far as what happens when it doesn't meet the PI, and the contractors weren't used to producing it yet. I think it's getting much better developed now.
And so
across
I'd like
the
to
state.
see the raw data that backs that up. Opinion isn't, engineers aren't supposed to be in the opinion.
Well,
It's supposed to be based on fact.
Right, and I guess the only one that me and my staff have experience with was Greg Thielen out of my office, was on that project up in Ward County where they had a PI spec up there, and Ward County uses it a lot.
I know, but is there hard data? Can they do density tests? Is there hard data that shows by the inclusion of this product, it makes a better product than without it. And not by looking at it, I'm talking about data.
I guess the best people to get that from will probably be the base one folks that say they need it. That they need the PI for their stuff to work better.
Again, it's gotta be more than an opinion, because it was an opinion before.
Well, and they do densities. They use American Engineering and Testing, I think, out of South Dakota that test their mixtures, so they can, that's how they develop their.
Was it American Engineering out of South Dakota that did this 1 mile road, I believe?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if they did the testing or if the DOT did or South Dakota LTAP.
No, it was
people from
American
South Dakota.
Engineering. I remember the pamphlet, we had
Oh,
to
yeah.
print
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Nice pretty picture, road going over the hill.
Yeah,
Okay.
until you actually read the fine print, and
1
all
mile.
those pictures and
1
everything
mile.
else, 1 mile controlled of closed road. And so they ran the equipment over too to produce it all. So again, if it works, it works, but let's see some data. Let's not subject the taxpayers of Griggs County to tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars for a product that we don't know if it works or not.
But I think it's okay to have that spec.
Yeah.
We can make the decision later if the pile and the road can't be duplicated. At least we know what we got in the pile.
All I'm saying is we're right back to where we were
I know,
a year and a half ago, letting
I know.
the road spec be the dominant
I know,
factor.
but we took care of it then too.
Yeah, but it's just if I have to go through that. It seems to me it's the same argument. If they test the pile and the pile test, put it on there, and
Forget about it.
what changed? What changed between the pile and when it got to the road?
Right. I guess the concern we have is that it's pretty likely that. Well, I guess we just want to be ready to say that, hey, if the contractor already has a pile that they produced, and they don't have any production tests, and we don't have the opportunity to check that we want to be able to test it on the road too. I don't know, but I guess if it makes, just looking at the commission meeting dates in April, you got one on the 5th and one on the 26th. We can still make say if we open the bids on the 26th, I could still get you guys some more data on that, bring it back to the April 5th meeting. We'd still have time to advertise it and collect them on the.
Well, I mean, is a compromise then you test the pile, and if the pile tests, then we negate the road test?
The issue is, will there be a test? Because if the gravel's already in a pile.
Well, and even with having the gravel on the pile and then having tested it, and if we have the opportunity to check their tests, as they're producing it, I'd be less concerned about it, but it doesn't always happen, and, contractors tend to, I guess, maybe we can always follow a truck back to where it's being hauled from, but they might have a pile in the pit that's the stuff that they're giving you the
Let's
test
not
for.
even
in
get
another
into,
pile.
let's not even get into calling, accusing the contractor or
Yeah.
something like that. That's
No.
not gonna do you any good sitting here.
No.
Most of the work is done by a local, well-respected contractor, and I don't wanna hear that anymore.
Oh, I'm not, I don't.
You just
know
said
anybody-
it.
I'm not talking about Gilbertson, I don't know them at all. I'm talking about contractors I've worked with that,
No,
it can be an issue.
Okay.
If they know that this is gonna be in there, then they still have time to adjust their price. They're not really bid yet.
Right.
but they did it before, they thought they were producing it, that's the
Yeah.
problem. They had it produced,
No, that was the issue.
So we can argue.
they had it produced.
So, let's just do it and move ahead. You got anything else?
Well, it's just that I guess if you guys wanna hold off on using that, like I said, we had time to I could bring something else to you. As far as that, modifying that SP. Or getting data from the base one people that say they basically need that.
I'd rather make that decision once we know what we have, so why wouldn't it, what's it gonna hurt to leave the spec in there?
Everybody's bidding the same thing.
Right.
It wasn't so much the spec, it was
It was a testing.
consistent
Oh, I
testing.
know.
Exactly.
Right, and that's what
Yes.
we're-
But if we have to be the referees again, we will.
Well,
I mean, I don't know how you get around it.
Well, that's why we have set up tolerances that are in that SP now.
Right.
It wasn't clear what happens if the tests don't match before, now it is.
Right.
We're eliminating that risk or that fight. I guess,
You know, that one of the issues with before potentially is testing methodology. If you got just some college kids out there with a spade taking those samples, are they doing it the way they're supposed to? I mean, that product shouldn't change much from the pit to the road, and
Right.
that stuff did, and that ain't right. So.
I think if it's tested when it's being produced, that's the most accurate way to do it.
Should be.
You know what's
You're
coming
getting a
out.
representative sample all the time when you're
I
building.
mean, it's
it.
going to change in the pile. We all know they're not 100% homogeneous, but
And then you make your adjustments as you're.
Especially if you're working with those fines, because we talked about, we had that issue too, that, you know, if the wind is blowing, it blows those fines over onto the other side of the pile and hope to mix it all together and haul it up to the
whatever.
well, and the other issue that we run into is, especially with concrete aggregates, I mean, just, it happens a lot with gravel too, but the pit handling matters. That's why you test on the road. You know, if you're not blending it or scooping from different parts of the pile where to pick up some of the stuff that the fines that blew over versus the cleaner side of the pile where the wind is blowing away from you, you gotta, the pit operations matter for segregation.
Right.
Yep, that's gotta be June, what's the date that we had?
June 30th, that's going to be under contract, and you gotta have 2 or 3 weeks ahead of that to get the reimbursements requests submitted,
Okay.
so that the check's cut by then, by DOT. So, basically the end of April would be the latest it could be, I think, for getting a contract, or taking bids, because it would be,
Well, I think you can
Bid
that's
it.
just my opinion. Let the bids
Yeah.
and bring us the information so we have it on hand, so we have it to look at.
okay, I guess with that,
Advertising for Gina.
so then for bids, if we're gonna advertise it, I guess depends on when you wanna open the bids. We'll work back from there. You have to advertise for, at least 2 weeks in the paper, if it's over 100,000, which this would be just under 500,000. And the first one has to be at least 15 days before the opening. So basically, since it's a weekly paper on Fridays, right? That would be, if you put it in the April 5th, so if you put it in Monday, it would be in on the 29th. And you can collect in that day, or it's later. But then it would be like, you know, if you don't have a separate meeting for that, then it would be basically set. So I mean, if you want to make it advertised the week after that, or collect on the 19th, something like that would make sense.
I don't care.
Well, we could have a special meeting.
And then is the open, different counties do it different ways, I guess, as far as the opening. I think, what's Good Friday? 19th, okay, you don't want to collect on that day. Whether you have it be a commission meeting or just, you know, like the road portfolio holder and the road superintendent or whatever, the auditor, to read the bids. If you're not gonna make the award then or any decisions, then it doesn't have to be a full commission, or you can do that on the 26th too if you want, or have a special meeting, whichever. Or if you want to open ahead earlier that day, and then we'll be able to review the bids and bring them to you at the meeting, like afternoon of the 26th. I guess that would be the easiest. Make sure they have their bonds and everything.
Has the state mandated, is it a go, no-go decision on having those 200 series fines in there, or is there latitude, in that? So
Can we make our own spec, you mean?
we did before.
Yeah, and that's what this is. It's the SP is a modifying the spec. I guess I did get some pushback from Brian asking, basically if you don't modify the gravel spec, basically you're doing the same thing you did 4 years ago, and it's tough to justify it, why that's gonna be performed differently than before if you don't have something else in there. And then like before, we talked about modifying that gradation to get the 200 in there. But there's 200 that's clay that has binder, and there's 200 that's silty that doesn't stick together. So the PI tests between those two materials that are both below the 200 Ziv.
But I mean, the reason it doesn't hold together is it's because it's an enormous amount of traffic. 4 years is, no matter what you put on there, it's not gonna hold. One of the big problems in that road is just excessive dust caused by those fines. They've had accidents out there because of that. 0-0 conditions, 2 trucks ran into each other.
Right. And then the dust, the PI makes the dust stick together better, and then the base one is supposed to do that more. It doesn't eliminate dust by any means, but it holds the surface together more.
Nope.
To get rid of the dust to be.
My question is basically, if this is a proven science, then I would imagine that the state would make it mandatory if they're allocating money towards this to use that mixture. If it's not proven, I would imagine that it would be up to the county or whoever's putting it on to make that decision. So that's why I asked, is it mandatory? If we don't use this, do they not give us the money, or do they just, or is this an opinion, and they're saying we would like you to use it, but we don't have any facts to back it up?
Well, I think they have facts to back it up, but I don't have any copies of any. I haven't seen any of it. I guess I've just been trusting them more or less at the state.
Is this the same highway department that mills holes in the asphalt up and down three stripes up and down all paved roads to destroy them? Is that the same outfit?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Where that comes down from. That's
Yeah. And remember, facts are not testimonials. There's a whole other difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're in the fact business as an engineer. That's all I want to see.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else, Wayne?
I have nothing.
So the next thing on the agenda I put on there, because I noticed when I was driving around up in Nelson County, they have their paved county roads are 65.
Are they all 65? Or
Well, I don't know.
ones that have been rebuilt?
I happened to be driving on County Road 4 and then down 35, which is the pavement that goes north of Macville there it goes north to Highway 4, and then 4 goes east and west.
Okay.
And I was just surprised that it was 65.
I didn't even realize that those had changed. I don't know when they had changed, but they used to be 55.
Well, I don't know.
I think you can put it on there whatever you want, I guess.
You can, okay. I thought maybe there was some requirement.
But, I think at one time I thought, the roads were designed for 55 miles an hour, or, and didn't they talk about, like sight distance and different things like that as far as increasing the speed?
I don't know if there's requirements, or are there requirements for engineering of approaches and intersections? I know.
Could be. Most of our approaches are, like 4 to 1 or 6 to 1. I think they wanted like 6 to 1 or 8 to 1, which I think we did on the Sutton Road. I think where we rebuilt that and flattened them out.
Yeah, they were 3 to 1, weren't they? Some of those back slopes.
Some of them were 3 to 1. The ditches were 3 to 1.
So we want to raise the speed limit?
Well, I didn't, I just thought I'd bring it up because I noticed that they had done that up in Nelson County.
Well, we just leave it to where it is and not enforce it.
Maybe Nelson County's having a meeting and wondering if they should lower their speed limits to under 55.
I went out and I looked at, we've got, like on the Hannaford Road, Airport Road, it says 50 miles per hour, I think.
Trucks.
Trucks 35, loaded trucks 35.
All right.
Yeah.
But I was going
And the airport
65,
road.
sailing along at 65 miles an hour. Felt
Like-
good.
Right. Yeah, you could back up 35 miles an hour if you wanted.
But the first mile of that airport road, it's so spongy no matter what. You can't go very
Yeah.
fast there. The trucks, it would.
It's the trucks, I think, maybe with that faster speed.
Sure.
They all say, well, we can't drive that slow with these big engines we got nowadays.
There is
All the
second
gears
gear.
they got and the.
There is
I
second
was
gear.
gonna say, are they too lazy to shift?
Yeah.
We should probably finish Paul there.
Fourth gear to go like this.
I guess do we even have the ability to raise the limits? I don't know if we do.
That's my question. That's why I asked.
I don't know, I'd have to do some research, I don't know, I found out yesterday it was on the agenda, I know when 200, when they increased the speed limit on 200 in the 90s, when they overlaid at that time or repaved at that time, I remember them changing the approaches to comply with 65 mile an hour speed limits.
So you want lower or?
It must be lower and longer.
Well, one time they lowered it to 55. I mean, they were 65. Right?
I can do some checking for next meeting. if
Well, I
that's the
mean,
case.
they were 55 for a long time back in the 70s,
Right.
in the 80s, when they thought it would save gas.
Right, but before that they were 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what I mean. They were at 65 at one time.
You know, even the interstate was 55 when I was going to college. It took forever to get from Valva to Fargo.
Suppose we could get that highway that goes east of Page, we could raise that to 65 too instead of 55.
That's not a 65?
Nope.
I found out about 4 or 5 times.
County Road
The last
20.
time I told him it should be, he didn't think that was a very
Yeah.
good idea.
I said, this is this, we gotta pay sales tax in Fargo, do we have to send our speeding tickets?
You would have went a little faster, you made it to Barnes County.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess Ramsey County raised their speed limits, maybe 10 years ago, and they just did they added the edge line, painted edge lines, and they redid the striping. But they didn't make any of the safety improvements that they probably should have. I don't know if it opens the county up to any liability if the approaches and other safety improvements aren't made at the same time you're doing that change.
well, I think we had a squawk this winter about a bus down there, didn't we, that hit a rough spot in the,
Get that bump down there. Said it's gotta be signed and flagged, well, it says bump on both sides, and plus it's got
On the airport road?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
son,
got
bitch,
an
that bastard will launch you.
it's got an orange diamond there.
First time I found that was not fun.
Whoa, it says bump, no, it says bump.
Where at?
On the airport road.
yeah.
It's right after you come past the church.
Oh.
About a mile, I
I
suppose.
haven't been down there.
That's a bad one.
About knocked my freaking teeth out.
Like Paul's Corner.
Might have even spilled my beer. That's what made me mad.
I think, I don't know, I think the counties have the ability to make the change, but
Do we need like maybe more speed limits signs, like if you're coming up to a curve, you're gonna have to slow down. I mean, you've got 45 on them, I think now.
and most of those are typically advisory, and the yellow sign
Right, that's the yellow sign.
underneath the curve.
I think we should advertise the gravel bids and open on the 26th. We never did finish, did we?
Okay.
Okay. What?
Is that a motion, Sean?
Does
What
it
should we
need to be a
collect them at the
motion?
meeting?
What?
Should we collect them like at 1 or 1:30, so we have an hour to review them before the...
Sure.
I don't know if You guys usually make a motion to advertise for bids?
I'll make a motion, we advertise for the graveling bids and have the opening on the 26th of April
I'll second.
during our regular meeting.
Been moved by Sean, seconded by Mark, that we advertise for gravel bids and open them on the 26th of April. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Alright.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Anything else?
And the completion date for that, Wayne and I talked about making that the end of September, just so it's done before it gets cold. But in the spec for that base one stuff, you don't wanna have it freezing yet, and that shouldn't be then. That seems like a good time to do it.
Just in time for bean and corn harvest.
Wasn't that when we got in trouble before? We had the end of September and it ran over?
That was on the seal coat.
Right.
Yeah, seal coats, you have to start before September 1st.
Does it have a temperature
Right.
limitation or a minimum temperature limitation?
Like a 50-degree
For the
surface
base one
temp.
stuff, yeah.
Right.
It does. It does?
Yeah, and it's in the spec, or in our SP for the project.
So what's the temp?
Can't be lower than 32 degrees in the
How
forecast.
how much can we crank that forward? I hate gravel in the last part of September. You're wasting it.
You too.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, if we don't get a,
Doesn't get packed in.
Yeah.
What day in September did you say?
28th was
Well,
the,
it'd be nice to have it in condition, because you know there's gonna be a world of traffic on it at the end of September and all through October.
Yeah, I was thinking about the harvest, when does that start?
July.
20th of September, beans can start.
So, I mean, why can't we make a completion date August 1st?
And I'd be a little, because if they have to make the stuff,
Well, they'll get here quicker.
they need time to, I don't know, how
Just
long it
say
takes to
September
produce
1st.
4,000 tons, it's probably a couple of weeks, but.
I don't know what would happen if we said, what would happen? Is there something against it, we can't do that?
No, you can make it whenever you want, it
I
just.
mean, all it's gonna do is put us ahead of the other people and they'll get pushed. The people
Absolutely.
with the September 15th will get pushed to the end of the line and we'll get pushed.
Well, it might be such a thing that nobody bids on it.
Could be.
That's the only issue.
Right, and then this one is, we need to have it under contract before, we're already pushing that window to get it reimbursed.
So
September 1st would be
Do
a.
do you think with the amount of bids we've gotten in the last 2 years that no one's gonna bid this thing?
People are hungry right now. 'Cause There's not as much stuff going on out west, so I.
I didn't say that would
Yeah,
happen.
money.
It could. I don't know, whatever you guys think.
Well, I mean-
I just think September 28th is too late.
That's why, well, so do I, so I mean, so we're letting the contract, shouldn't we let it
The way we
to
want
give
it.
the maximum advantage to Griggs County?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And if the issue is that it doesn't get packed well enough, well, then we could have it done in the 1st of August.
Well, I think we should make it, well, I mean,
You bet.
well, I mean, so we don't get any moisture after we put this down, then the stuff
Yeah.
is fluffy, and then when they gotta plow it, then it just pushes everything off it.
You know, Wayne, even in townships and stuff, boy, if we could get that stuff put on in June, so then you get all year to drive on it, pack it, and you work it with the blade, that's all plus.
Depends upon how many projects or, these contractor, whoever gets it has.
Yeah, that's
to
right.
Get it done,
Yeah,
so much time.
I think 1st of August would be about as late as that, considered.
I mean, if someone can't do it, they'll look at it and say, no, my schedule's full, but
Yeah.
again, we've had so many contractors on this stuff. You gotta believe that we're gonna get somebody to do it in the time frame we want it done.
You bet. Earlier the better. As a rule.
I mean, as a contractor, when I have a bunch of stuff to do, I look at the due dates on them and I sort the ones that I
Adjust them
want to do to
accordingly.
the back, I push them to the back.
Well, the majority of projects are gonna be kind of a late fall completion date, so if you do push it up to the middle of August, or say August 24th.
You're gonna get moved to the front of the pile.
I'd say August 1st.
Oh,
Because if load limits don't come off until June 1st,
How many yards you putting on? How many loads?
25,000 tons.
Gives them 2 months.
You know,
Should be plenty.
25,000
Yeah,
ton. and a-
Summer's only 4 months long anyway.
That's
Gives them
1,000
half the
loads.
summer.
You know, they gotta make it too, though.
Well, I think you're assuming that it isn't already piled.
Well, I
How are you
don't,
gonna test that?
Yeah.
well, yeah, exactly. I don't think that with it being a special, you know, that this binder modified stuff, I don't think people have files of that laying around that they have tested and know it's gonna meet it. So that's the concern with the,
I think it's an admirable goal.
I can see doing it in August, but I'd be really lenient or reluctant to try and make it the first part. I just think you're gonna get prices that are gonna include the $900 a day liquidated damages, and you're not gonna get something you're gonna wanna award, price-wise.
I think we gotta spend the money, so
Right.
we've got to pay out of our own pocket.
Who sets liquidated damages?
Well, I just use this number out of the spec book that, contracts between, I don't remember what the lower end is, but at $500,000, it jumps from $900 a day to $1,100 a day for completion day contracts.
Mm-hmm.
DOT wouldn't let us charge them the last time
Well,
anyway. DOT wouldn't let us charge them the last time anyway. Liquidated damages,
No,
because they,
because
on
you
their
said
seal
the
coat.
weather interfered with the
Yeah.
completion date. Well, that was the purpose of it, but
That was that the seal coat one?
Mm.
Seal coat. Okay, yeah, that, like, were they having trouble getting the oil or two, or?
No, they bid too many jobs and didn't get the job done.
the weather caught
They were-
up.
They were stockpiling jobs.
They had all the signs up and they didn't get here, it got cold on them and they didn't come back. They couldn't, it went past the September 1st date,
Yeah.
or 10th, or whatever the day is.
I think we got a little bit, but we didn't get what we.
Probably gotta allow for some weather stuff too, I mean, in case,
Well, I mean,
what if it rains for 3 weeks? No one,
there's provisions in the contract for that, but I mean,
Well, not, on a completion date contract, weather is not a factor, you can't give them days based on that.
but the notion they're gonna overbid it because to cover the liquidated damages doesn't impact Rick's County. They overbid it, but they gotta pay us the money back. So that's not a factor.
It's an incentive to get it done.
Well, no, I mean, it doesn't cost, so they think they're gonna be 10 days late, so they overbid it by $9,000.
Oh, right.
But then
They overbid it, but
Now
we
they
get the
might
money
lose-
back anyway.
But then if they get it done early, then you're still paying.
Then we probably got a better job, and we're just speculating on whether or not they're gonna do that anyway. They still have to bid, so they still have to bid against other contractors. Are they going to risk, overbidding and getting not to have the job? I think Mark's right, I think August 1st and
Earlier the better, whenever we put gravel on. I think Wayne would agree too. Anytime you put it on your roads, the earlier the better, isn't it?
yeah, but I don't know about this.
Well, and this,
If we can get it done or
You
not.
as a
maybe we can get-
contractor, that's.
Let's try it.
gotta
you
have
want to do it when it's warm, and this one,
Yeah, we lose our heat too.
so this has got density requirements and everything too with the base one additive. That the contractors doing that testing, and
If the temperature is an issue, the earlier the better, guys. It's all making more sense as we go.
well, and it's just that it can't be freezing is basically the limitation of it. But other than that,
You
it's
can
not a
freeze
big
the end of
deal.
August pretty easy.
I mean, in September is usually, you know, that'd be decent enough weather to still do it, even if they did run over. You know, if I don't like going into October with projects, or even for gravel, but I just know that.
August 1st.
August 1st.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we have a project bid for completion of August 1st.
Second.
Been moved by Mark, seconded by Sean, that we put a completion date in the contract of August 1st. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. There. I guess we'll see what happens. Okay, anything else?
I think so.
Okay, Time clocks is the next thing on the agenda.
We'll hope so. Have a warm weekend.
No storm.
No storms,
Yeah.
a little rain.
You can go ice fishing without the house, just set up out there.
Yep, absolutely.
I haven't done it all.
Yes,
It'd be a good weekend to do it.
You just want to mail it up and we'll ship off the package again?
absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Who laid their semi on
I
the
guess
side?
the best thing about going that early would be before it gets to that.
Absolutely.
So there's all.
Yeah.
They won't be
Laying
competing
there.
with semis.
Yep.
Yeah, it's better to have it done then, I'm just worried about the cost is all.
Must've been texting.
Well, we'll see what it comes in at.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Maybe it won't make a difference.
It might not, if they just schedule it then ahead of the road to work, maybe it'll work out, I hope it does.
Nothing happened in the morning.
If they take 40 loads a day, it'll take 25 days.
Yeah, I don't.
But it's later.
Make it all up on
Come by and-
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, no, they're gonna.
Hundreds of loads.
It could've happened
Yeah.
in the morning.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All
guys.
depends
Thanks.
how far you gotta bring it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mark,
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yes.
your topic is next.
Okay. Is that, oh, the time clock thing.
Did you read that email?
I did a little bit.
Right?
I did a little bit. I didn't get all the way to the end, I just got it. Did he talk about cost at all?
No. I think the software is capable, but we do payroll like nobody else on earth.
Yeah,
So we need to start doing payroll like the rest of the world,
sure.
and then I think we can make a decision.
Payroll like the rest of the world, what do you
That's correct.
reference?
You have no hours in your payroll times.
We have what their time clock says. So they do their time clock. It has the amount that it would come out, dollar
Who's
figure.
they?
All the employees.
You don't have a time clock.
They have a timesheet. Every employee's got a timesheet. So they have their timesheet, they do their
There are
hours.
no posted hours entered in the timesheet, in the payroll software.
Their timesheet has their hours that they've worked. They've
The
calculated.
payroll software.
No, their timesheet.
The
They-
timesheet should be entered into the payroll software,
That's what we do.
but no hours. It says no hours.
She converts it to a salary after the fact.
How do you keep track of the accruals?
You don't, that's the problem.
How do you accrue vacation? How do you accrue sick leave? So you have another system that you have set up to track all that stuff?
No, each department has their own.
This payroll needs to start being done the way every other business in the world does it, or somebody needs to go find a different line of work. I'm sick of this. We asked for this to be done right 5 years ago.
It's being done, Troy. If you would like to come in and I will
No,
gladly show
when
you.
when I look at this sheet where you pay your people, I should be able to see all the accruals should be on that sheet.
Right.
Vacation, sick leave.
Would you like to see that?
I want it in the payroll software so that it's.
It's in the payroll software.
How come Kelly Bernstein says it's not?
It is in there. He says that we do not put in the hours because the hours are on their timesheet. It gets put into, every employee says, I work this many hours, I get this per hour. They've calculated it out, then we put in that salary amount into
That's
the,
not how payroll is done. Not in the rest of the world.
There was a problem. When you calculate, you converted it from an hourly to a salary. And that's really not the way, it should work. So it should start on an hourly basis. It should be, then you go through and you figure each deduction on that hourly basis. Some of the deductions now are on gross and some of them are on net. And so then doing it that way, then you can accrue how many hours actually are worked and how much is allocated to each category. And then
How much
also the
vacation was
overtime,
earned, how much sick
the
leave
overtime
was-
fits in correctly then with on the hourly, because the way you're doing it, yes, you start out with hourly, but you're going to salary, and it's hard to then put the overtime, which is hourly, in with a salaried, in with the way you're doing it. So I notice on the checks that are paid out, they're almost always the same amount every month, every 2 weeks. So I assume that what's happens is that you convert it hourly to salary.
Yep.
And then any deficiencies you make up with
Sick
either
leave or
sick
vacation.
time or, yeah.
Yeah.
So there is the problem with it. It's really easy to do it the other way. This hasn't been set up that way, but it'll make your job easier, and it'll make it more understandable. And to Troy's point, it'll make it fit the way that everybody does payroll. And then we'll be able to, Kelly Hornstein will be able to use those numbers, those hourly numbers, and input them, or be able to input from a time clock, an hourly, into the software. Because you understand, there's no need to have a time clock in a salaried position.
Right.
So we can't input anything in when you don't have it, when I don't have hours to input, and we can't.
There
input
is
hourly
a
to-
reason to have it. The misconception here is that salaried positions are salaried positions because they don't have to come to work. Salaried positions are salaried positions because they're expected to be there during working hours plus more hours than that.
Yeah.
And if you use if the compensation for that is some sort of a comp time arrangement, that will be kept track of in there too.
Yeah, government is a hybrid form of a salaried elected official is a hybrid form of a salaried official, because not only don't they have to show up for the 40 hours, but they're also obligated to show up for more than 40 hours if the job presents itself.
That's my point.
I know. We're talking the same thing here.
So
And
then,
it's easy to
if we have the hours worked, if the job requires 25 hours.
I know.
Then we can budget. We shouldn't be paying for a full-time employee.
that
If
is
it's
the crux.
more than 40 hours or 37 and a half,
Right.
then we should take that into consideration also.
Right.
We can't do that now. We don't know anything. So I mean, this thing is just starting to aggravate me. I know it's hard to tell when I'm aggravated.
So there's been some misconceptions, and it was probably possibly my fault or Ron's. Or when we started this whole discussion, we always took for granted that the Attorney General had a ruling that said you didn't have to work 40 hours or 30 hours, and you couldn't make an elected official work that amount of time. That was just a small sentence at the end of the whole ruling. The ruling started out over a sheriff that wanted to be paid for anything over 37 or over 40 hours, and wanted to also be paid for sick leave. And so the whole Attorney General's opinion came down that an elected official takes the job knowing that there are no set hours, maximum hours that you have to work, and correspondingly there are no minimum hours you have to work.
And correspondingly, if all of these salaried positions are accruing sick leave and vacation,
I don't know if they are or
they
not.
need to be accrued on the basis of the hours that are worked. That's how vacation and sick leave is earned. If you don't keep track of the hours, how do you accurately accrue it?
Okay, so
You can't do it.
Okay, so the Attorney General's opinion said that elected salaried people, personnel, are not entitled to
Vacation and sick leave. No,
vacation.
but that's not the way we've been doing it here. They're not entitled to it, but it has been the practice of Griggs County to do that.
Absolutely.
And as long as it is, then we should have the number of hours worked also. Otherwise, we're blind. We're at.
We are. The little bit of the roadblock in this thing is we can't tell Samantha that she has to come to work 40 hours.
We can ask her
But we
how.
can ask
We can.
the elected official to verify how many hours they work.
That's correct.
And then we can adjust their salary accordingly.
That's correct.
So, no one wants to get to that point.
There is a little, it actually can go a little bit further than that.
I know.
Because if a commission doesn't feel that the employee is doing their job or here when they should be, can ultimately go out to the governor. But you also, you still have to make sure that that employee is following policy. So if the policy says that employees are supposed to be at work and the operating hours of the courthouse are from 8 until 4:30, you still can bring that person in the commission meeting and say, hey, you're elected by the people.
No, we can't. We don't know who's here and who's not.
Well, I mean, in
That is why we're having this discussion,
I
Jamie.
understand that. But, no, I understand that. But I mean, in theory, I'm just saying what your powers are. I'm not saying that using that as an example, but I'm saying your powers are just say, hey, you have an accountability to the county to
I
do
know.
that.
Well, that's why we're talking about it.
And I didn't want to get that far. And I don't think we have a gross misuse of this, but it would be beneficial for all the employees, all the citizens, the county commission, everybody to exactly know where we stand as far as how much everybody works. And that's all that's all the whole point of this. Putting a time clock in is not to, that's a benefit of the time clock. The time clock is to get us on an hourly basis so that the software will do it and we know exactly then how much time is being accrued, to what categories it is, and who's actually accruing the time. So, and the time clock will give the elected official the ability when you work after hours to punch in and show that. It isn't necessarily locking you in, you have to be here from here to here. You don't have to be, it always says you don't have to be, but I think it's in the citizens' best interest to be able to determine what's actually being done, as it is in the elected official's best interest also.
With like this time clock thing with it, it's punching our time and whatever, then that gets pushed into like, this is a salary or like on the amount that your paycheck would be. That's basically what we're doing right now. We're just not doing the whole math in the system. We're doing the math. Each department head is doing the math outside. Then we're converting that and putting that into the software.
Understood, but there's a difference between a salaried employee and an hourly employee. And a salaried employee is treated differently. Right now you're taking an hourly employee and putting it in and treating them as a salaried employee for all purposes in the payroll. So they need to go through there separately. So on a time clock, a salaried employee, the time clock doesn't make any difference. They punch it.
Yeah.
It's just for informational purposes. It isn't actually for giving them the salary.
Yeah.
The time clock for the hourly employee is the gospel. If you work this amount of hours, here's what you get. If you work this much overtime, here's what you get.
But it will be for the elected officials too, because the accruals will be based on the number of hours that they work.
But elected officials are not supposed to accrue any vacation. Or
You don't
sick
accrue vacation or
No.
sick leave?
No.
Oh, you don't? Okay,
No.
I thought they did.
Elected
Okay.
officials don't.
Okay,
No, the reason if you look on the sheet that the sheriff has it accrued is from his time as a deputy, I would assume.
Mhm.
Yeah.
okay.
And
Anyway,
that probably should have been
But
paid
wait.
out.
Walked away, huh?
Either paid
When you
out
were
or-
on maternity leave, didn't you have to get sick leave or share sick leave from people? You didn't worry about it. Okay, wasn't
No.
there to lose.
No.
Very good.
An elected official doesn't accrue or vacation or
Yep.
sick leave, and we don't use vacation or sick leave. At one point in Griggs County, that did happen.
Yes,
I
it
think- I think probably prior to 2013 it did, but it hasn't for quite some time. I know my mom was here, and I know there were some people that changed from accrual to not. But it hasn't happened here since before you guys were elected.
So anyway,
Well, I'd like to see a time clock go in. What does it take to have it get it done? That's my whole thing,
somebody needs to learn how to do payroll.
But I mean,
And the payroll, the time
Well-
sheets, the time all has to go to one person. Not this, everybody does their own payroll. That is not the way it should be done.
I didn't
how
mean
do we
they all
get-
do their own payroll. They do
That's what you told me.
Each department does their own time sheet. Jamie signs Paige's time sheet, and then that gets handed in to me.
Okay,
Because I don't watch Paige. Jamie watches Paige.
Yep,
So
that's
it's got to
fine.
go through the department head,
That's
and then
fine.
it comes to me.
that's
But
fine.
Yep.
So then
absolutely.
everybody will have a time card, or you'll have a file.
well, no, so the way I understand the program, if we put it in place, that each employee will have a home computer that will be their time clock. And they will log in their computer and either through fingerprint or
Visual recognition.
visual reference, it will then say, yes, that's who's logging in here and now you're on duty. It'll also have the ability for the elected officials, if they so choose to punch it, and the road department to log in on their phone and punch the time clock, and then the means of verification then is by GPS, and the GPS will show them where it's at. So, yes, there won't be the offices anymore doing their own, it'll all be into one program.
And we won't have to send the email out the day before our meeting saying, please get your timesheets in so we can get it on. You
Because-
push a button and you'll have it.
Yeah,
I would hope.
No, that's how this will work.
Yeah.
And the email there was a little bit misleading because I don't know why. We can put the time clock in and fix that later.
Yep.
The time clock will fix the hourly thing.
Yep.
And I think
Not if we don't use the hours.
no, not if we don't use the hours. I know.
I mean, this payroll has to be calculated, each person by the hours that they work. This can't.
The software will do that, and then you might have to hand input it into GovernSoft.
That's fine.
Yeah. The software will tell you exactly how much gross wage, how many hours gross wages, all the deductions, it'll print out, it'll be able to.
Well, I'm
give you
sure
one.
you just download a file every year and it uploads
Yep.
the tax tables, and then you put the hours in there and the rate, and it's poof.
We use one at the airport.
Right.
And every year,
Year end,
if it changes,
W-2s.
if it changes, you just,
Yep, maybe a monthly.
it's really simple, really simple. You'll like it.
I
It'll make your
I
job
can't-
easier.
I cannot imagine doing it the way it's done.
Well, it's
Blows
been done
my
this
mind.
way forever because.
That's right.
It isn't that we switched doing this. It was just.
No,
right when
I
we
know
took
that.
over.
And Sam was taught the way it was before.
Well,
Same
unfortunately,
thing.
Sam was never taught because there was a vacate, the position was
Oh.
vacated, so Sam got thrown in here
Fresh.
without any training.
Pretty well, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, I think we're under an agreement that we all kind of want a time clock.
Yep.
Okay, so I think the only thing that's holding us back right now is the cost of what this program is gonna be.
Well, somebody needs to talk to Kelly again, because this answer is based on history, and I think history is,
I thought
we're gonna have to do something different. He's looking at past payrolls and what was in the batch, and that's not, we gotta change the way that's done.
Yeah,
So-
it'll all change a little bit. Long as, no, you said something
Well,
about Dakota programs?
Well, I think, so this time clock software does the payroll calculations too, John, or what?
Yes.
So it does, it'll write the checks, or? You have a,
Yeah, in our application, yeah, it will write the checks.
so do you write checks with the computer?
Yeah.
You
Me?
do know? You do know?
Yep.
Okay, so you have check stock that you buy,
Mhm.
and then you just print on the name, and
Yep.
you don't print your own checks. You don't have a maker.
Yeah, I think she got check paper. And
I get check
brings it
paper
up.
and then they just go through a separate printer that's got the laser ink or
Yeah,
that special ink.
Oh, you do have okay, so you have Micker toner.
Yeah.
Oh, so that printer's designated check.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
what's that?
So that should be a piece of cake then.
Now, is there a reason that we're with Dakota programs as far as for what we have to send into the state or anything like that, or just what we've always had, or?
Dakota Programs is what we use for everything. That's what we use for the bills. That's what we use
That's
for.
the general ledger software
It's
Okay.
everything.
and the taxes and stuff. You know, all the stuff Connie does.
Okay,
So then
So-
this is kind
so
of
this
in
would
that.
be just separate from, what
We
we're
would-
looking at is a separate program from Dakota's?
Well, I imagine the payroll program is a separate program today, isn't it?
It's on a web. It's web based,
Okay,
Okay,
so
but somehow we need it linked to Dakota Programs so that it comes out of those funds. out of everybody's budget and stuff like that. It needs to come out of
It
those
has to
ones.
hit the general ledger.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so he's saying, Bob is saying that even if, it would still be faster to manually post from the database.
Maybe.
Yeah, he says that. If posting hours was done, I mean, posting manually into a database would go much faster and allow the user to visually see if the right amounts are there, including the right GL account number per employee, number of earnings code. So then, in that case, we would take the time card, the time cards would be in a digital format, and they would download that, and then you would put the data, you would post the data into GovernSoft as if you were reading it off a regular hard time
But that's
card.
just gonna be a dollar number probably.
No, because it's going to GovernSoft, so GovernSoft is gonna have to be able to tell how much money goes for Social Security, how much money goes into retirement, how much money goes into healthcare. So those numbers are gonna have to be posted individually.
Well, I imagine the software's probably got all that
It probably
broken out
does.
at the end.
Right.
Because
But you
those all
don't
come
need-
out of
you
different
don't
accounts.
need each employee. You just need to know if it's coming out of road or.
Correct. But I mean, I'm still mystified as to how we handle overtime. How do you convert, I know how you convert hours, you take the gross sum and convert it to a salary. How do you handle the overtime then?
But then I do it as like the road department is 40 hours per week. I break that down so that it's hourly. They are getting this much per hour. Then I take that times time and a half.
Yeah.
So I mean, they are hourly employees. Every one of them is hourly employees. But if they don't work 40 hours, like the road department doesn't work 40 hours, they're not going to get that same salary amount.
Unless they add in their vacation. Or
Well, if they haven't worked that and then they use vacation or sick leave, then it's going to be the same thing. So then I just keep going. If they don't have vacation or sick leave and then they don't work their 40 hours, they're not going to get that same. Then we will then deduct that amount.
Right.
So everyone is still hourly.
Why don't you
Don't
let
you
the
have to-
you're paying for web-based software and you're doing the calculation before you put the information in there?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
It makes it much easier.
Oh God, no.
I swear. I really swear to it.
Why do you have the software then? Why don't you just do it by hand?
They basically are.
Exactly.
Yeah, it basically is done by hand. So then do you, let's say, for instance, you have a $10 an hour person and they work 5 hours of overtime. So they're gonna get $75.
Yeah.
Then you go through and you figure out each deduction, FICA, all the different taxes from that?
Nope. I just have another earnings number. I put in $75 and it calculates it out for me.
Yeah, so see, so you're treating them as actually getting two salaries.
Two earnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see the problem with that? Oh, okay. Well then,
You should.
it's okay. It's okay. So they're we need to have this so that each employee is then treated as one employee. You're treating them as two different salaries. Their overtime salary and
But
their-
it gets one lump sum. It's one lump salary. They don't get two different checks. They don't.
No, I understand that.
It's
I understand that.
Like,
I
I
understand. I got it. It's just you're going through a whole bunch of steps you don't need to. How's that sound?
I don't have it in files on here.
No, I understand how you're doing it, Sam.
Yeah.
I got it. I mean, we went through this before with the budget part of it. I know, but we will, let's get it to a point where it's, so as Troy says, it's done as per everybody else. I mean, and that way, whether it's Troy looking at it, or Dale, or Sean, or me, or anybody, we are used to looking at a payroll, we can say, okay, we understand how it's working now. Okay. And again, we haven't demanded before or haven't pushed hard enough, and this was the way you were doing it, and I don't think there's any problem with people being underpaid or overpaid, but let's get it back to a point where it's standardized.
Okay, so how do we get time clocks going then?
Well, now we gotta get Travis in here, and we gotta
Yes.
sit down, we gotta sit down across the table from him, and here's what we want, what's it gonna cost, how are you gonna do it?
Well, we've already got it.
Yeah, the
We
only
have a lot of
question,
it.
only question was on the, he said there's a cheaper, recognition software coming out.
Authentication stuff.
Yeah, right now it's $3,000 for it, he thought it was gonna be cut in half.
Okay.
So, but
can he-
that's added on afterwards, so you could buy the time clocks first and then add that in.
Well, that's already in the server. We can use the one that Mary's using, can't we?
They don't, probably not, because that software doesn't support the recognition software.
Oh, I don't.
No. That's my understanding. So,
Okay.
Travis, some more, gets to wait another 2 more weeks.
Do we, and then as we do this, it's probably gonna have, Sam, do you think you're gonna need some more training to run this new software or whatever?
Oh, that's
Or get some training,
That's fine.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as
Yeah.
this change is
Yeah.
or whatever, I'll talk to
Yeah.
Kelly and get
Yeah.
the training on the whole
Yeah.
software.
But the way it'll be, you'll pull it up so employee X, and you'll have employee X's salary in there, and all you do is punch in their hours.
Yep.
And it goes,
Yeah.
calculates it. And then you get the bottom figure, and it shows, then it'll show you exactly, the FICA taxes held out, the unemployment, everything else will be held over here, and
If it's 35 hours they work, they gotta take 2.5 vacation to fill it in, and
Right.
it comes
It'll-
off the vacation balance. and-
it'll do all of it.
Yeah. Hopefully it works like this. Sure sounds great. It
Oh, yeah,
works.
I know.
Oh, God. And
But it
If you,
should.
if you work
it
a
should.
holiday, it
Yeah.
puts 8 hours up and what your holiday pay is, and then the rest of the week.
Yeah, I don't know what software program you work under, but
So
there's a zillion of them.
people,
It'll be easy.
Okay, new courthouse, old courthouse.
I met with a guy in Grand Forks, or in Fargo, at NDSU, about coming in and doing, what do they call it, a historical survey or whatever they want to call it.
preservation.
Yeah, yeah. And they're gonna come with 2 people, and they're gonna try to come up here at some point in time and meet with one of us, or a couple of us, and we'll walk through, explain to them what we kind of want to have done, and that sort of thing. They'll do. And he said it's a good project for like a grad student, kind of a deal, where they've got to get their architectural stuff or whatever, drawings, those sorts of things of each room, and
Pictures, I suppose they do something to
yeah,
create a record, right?
create a record. Yeah, and so it's progressing, slow but sure, but it's going.
So,
And how much more after this?
well, that's,
What should we do next? Well, where's our next step?
well, I mean,
Where's that hoop jumping letter now?
Yeah,
How many, that was a while ago, wasn't it?
yep.
It wasn't very well defined how many hoops are gonna have to go.
No,
No, they were just kind of like options and ideas for us.
okay, so that was,
And I think one of them, is that we've never offered the building for sale. But then there was a discussion we can't because it's,
Because we haven't
Collateral.
gone through all the hoops either.
well, no, I think that was this last letter from the State Historical Society.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the letter before that, and I can't even remember who it was from.
okay, so I think the next step with NDSU would be a detailed description of what they plan to do.
okay,
And then we submit that detailed description to the State Historical Society. There's no use spending a whole bunch of money and going through all this thing and then hand it to the State Historical Society and they say, yeah, that's not enough. No, we didn't mean that. We meant this and this and this. We need to get these things pre-approved
okay,
and we need to pin them down as to what where the end of this process is. This can't be a kick the can down the road merry-go-round type deal. So, is this what you want when you said, and they'll say yes or no? No, okay, no, then what else do you want? Okay, here, we gotta get to a point where when we get done doing what they want done, then it's over with.
Yeah.
And if you read that letter, she said never.
That's the feeling I got.
Well, it said it in there.
You're gonna be on this merry-go-round for the rest of your life.
Right, if we
So-
choose to, so we need to make, if it is never, then she needs to say no. And then she needs to say no under any circumstances. And then we have something to battle against.
Yeah.
Then we talk to the congressman.
Then we go to the next step.
Okay.
She might have been a bureaucrat for a lot longer than we have, but I guarantee you we understand what you're trying to do.
So maybe even before I have come out,
Yeah, what would you please give us a detail
of what you can do, and
what plan to be done and the cost projection and
then I've got a sister that lives in Bismarck too, and I can run out and visit that gal too. One way or the other, this thing's gotta come to a head,
absolutely. Absolutely.
you know?
Okay.
That's got it, yeah. Can't be a one-sided negotiation.
Future business. Anything you guys want on the future agendas?
You said Harold's coming.
He's coming to do the audit next week. Yep.
Of the Historical Society, when it comes to the audit, no longer have an auditor.
What now?
I say we always are waiting for the Historical Society's
Fair board.
Budget?
Fair boards.
budget and stuff when he does the audit.
That's right.
We've had some issues with that. The other members did not have access to any of his files, and so I got some information. I'm hoping Harold can use it, but we're just kind of crossing our fingers at this point.
That's always been, when we're waiting to get this audit done, it's because they haven't got.
Absolutely.
Their budget.
Now we're absolutely not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Isn't that turned in October?
Usually
Supposed to be.
When the rest of them?
it's supposed to be turned in January for the year end.
Oh.
Like his,
Talking audit now, not budget.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about
Okay.
record keeping.
There
yeah.
you go.
Dave was doing their books.
Oh,
And we never have.
We never
we
get
gave up
it,
trying
because
to
he's
get a
been sick
budget
since
from them.
January.
It never has
yeah,
happened.
yeah,
And now he passed away, so.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, you'll have to find someone else. Okay.
So we've been working with Bonnie Krenz, which is another Fair Board member. So it's
Yeah, but you're waiting for the fair board, you're waiting for the museum.
and no,
But really, all she needs to do is get the bank statements.
and that's what I got.
Figure it out, right?
That's I just got the bank printout or whatever. So
So what are you waiting for? You waiting for the?
no, that's it. I just got the Fair Board. Usually we're waiting for the Fair Board stuff.
Okay, not the museum.
No, Fair
Or the
Board.
Historical Society.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with the fair board?
Well, Dave
Fair
did the
board.
Dave did the fair board.
Yeah, but you aren't waiting for the historical society, you're waiting for the fair board.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Did he also do the historicals, the fair board?
I don't know the historical society.
Dave
I don't know.
did the fair board.
Right.
Yeah.
That's always been the one that we've been waiting on.
Who does the
Okay.
historical society stuff?
I don't know who does the audit.
I don't know if we need that one. Is that one?
Yeah, we don't usually get that one.
Oh, we don't need that. Oh,
Yeah.
oh that's a,
And the loan item.
yeah, that's just gone anyway.
I said historical, I was thinking fair board.
Okay.
Right, right. Okay, anything else?
Oh. Two, if we're gonna talk about the fair board, I did a little checking into the property that we own down by the fairgrounds.
Okay,
Where the horse arena is,
right.
that's ours. That's it.
Oh, the rest of it belongs to the fair board or the city?
The city.
City, okay.
So, as we were talking about the one meeting with our specials, we got a specials on that little strip next to the road. there. Is there a reason we keep that?
Because we didn't know we owned it.
No, yeah,
Is there
a little
something
bit.
that-
So because it was a Griggs County Fair,
Yeah?
in order to have the liability to be indemnified by our insurance, it had to be on Griggs County property, the way I understand it.
But most of the fairgrounds isn't on our property.
No, I know.
Well,
I think but that's where the carnival's at. Right, is where the,
Oh, maybe,
yeah.
Or the arena.
maybe. Well, it was
Yeah.
kind of south of the new community building, I think.
But anyway, that's the way I understand it. But I don't
What
know
I
if
was,
it's
what
correct.
I was told when I talked to Burnham is that at one time that was all county. Underneath the fair barn and all. And
I
he
don't
said the
know.
fair board got tired of paying all the specials.
Right.
And they couldn't afford to pay all the specials.
So
So
they
then
gave
the
it-
city took it back.
So yeah, that's probably right. That's probably right. I just know that, I believe that the part that the county kept was because of the liability involved with the carnival and the fair, but I don't know that. So that brings me to, maybe you don't know the answers, but that's another question. Are we still paying the specials on property that is turned back for taxes in the city? We were at one time.
I think we still are, but I can make sure of that.
Yeah, we shouldn't be.
I thought we gave those back.
Well, I know, but in that year, Grace, in that year period from when they come up, not when they're not paid until, we were, at one time, the county was paying the specials on that. And there's no sense, that shouldn't happen,
If we've sold it at a sale, then we don't.
right?
But I do know that we still have one property that's still in Griggs County's name within the city. I would have to.
Check on that, yeah.
Yeah, I will.
Because we should, even when it's in our possession to be sold, we shouldn't be responsible for the specials.
Just like the city isn't doing it. When they have them, they try to get rid of them as quick as they can, so then they get back on the tax rolls.
Yeah, and they've got some leeway in there,
Yeah.
but they're bonded for that, of course.
I was approached too by another individual for, about the old social service building too, so hopefully something,
You referred them to our agent.
yeah, yeah, hopefully something happens there, so. So by the end of April, we should have a time clock.
You can be the first to punch it.
Yep. And then, yeah, let's see if we can get some finished with this, with the post office deal too.
Yep,
Get that finished up.
yep.
Some of these things we've been talking about for a long time, let's just get them
Yeah,
done.
and see if we can,
If,
don't have to have so many boxes, and see if we can just have one big
if we
drop
can't
box.
get that one here, then I'll speak to her about that. But I thought she said that she
No,
was.
one box here, I mean, we don't need to have.
Oh,
a box.
here.
Yeah, we don't need to have 9 of them, I don't think.
Yeah,
I don't,
whatever.
Oh, that's the question that I asked her, was the
Right.
big box. So then I would have to ask her about that one too. Okay.
I think social services will squawk if they can't have their own, just from a privacy. They got
well, I mean, we can
Well,
split
I
it.
think
We
you
don't have
want
to-
your own.
all the HIPAA
Don't you,
rules
or
and
does it matter?
stuff. So I mean, you could have.
You get it down to 4 or
I guess
5.
I don't know how much mail comes in here. I suppose
Most of my stuff is done through email.
You get down to 4 or 5, you wouldn't have to have each one. Yeah.
right.
Could be the county offices and social services and Jamie's maybe, and the sheriff's department might be different, and who knows, but let's get something done.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully I should have some information to you guys by the last meeting in April.
Motion we adjourn.
Been moved by John, seconded by Sean. That we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned at 4:20. March 22nd.
Next meeting will be April 5th at 2:30 PM.
March 29th.
March 29th at 2:30 PM.